Help me, Mama.
Hi everybody, this is Emily with Help Me Mama. Today I'm going to talk about training. I've talked about training a lot in passing, and I wanted to give you some ideas and some principles of what it is and what I mean when I talk about it, because I talk about it all the time. And so one of the questions that I get a lot with moms with newer babies is, what do you train first? And the things that I like to do first are the most practical things, and definitely things to keep your child safe. The first one is come. So you can even do this crawling, but your child usually understands a little bit better when they're starting to walk, and that's when most of the training starts. You want your child to come when you say come. Another first one that I like to do for convenience sake, but also to learn how to be a helper in the family and to give them just, there's an element of like confidence of I can do this type of thing, is I have my little ones take their diapers to the trash. So pretty much as soon as they can understand that, which is a lot earlier than you would think, I wrap up their diaper, say, put this in the trash. I think Owen was doing that probably by 14 months, Rai too. I mean, he would do what his brother would do. And so that's great because you go from the principle of putting something in the trash to putting something in a box to putting cups in the refrigerator when they're a little bit older. And so having them do like a task, the coming is a task to you. The putting something in the trash is a task away from you. So that's another principle that's good for them to learn early on. I think the other one that comes very naturally and probably first more than anything is no or stop. And that has to be trained too. You want your child to freeze when you tell them to stop, okay? If you tell them stop and they keep going, it can be a danger, just like come. When you say come here and they keep running out into the street, that's a danger. These are things that for your child's own safety, for your peace of mind, you want them to obey first time on these things. So definitely those are my first what to train, what do you train first things. The next two go together. And one thing that I observe, and this is kind of why I wanted to do this video, is that I observe a lot or hear about a lot, and it's not like always wrong. Sometimes you have to do this, is that when you're teaching your child to obey, parents will tell them to do something, they disobey, and either they allow their child to continue to disobey, which I think happens to all of us, or they force the child to do it. Now, in a dangerous situation, of course, you have to do this. Your child's running into the street, you say come, they disobey, you run and grab them so they're safe, right? That has to happen. But say your child is running after a ball in the grass at the park, you say pick up the ball and come here, and they don't come. This is a training situation and a practice and consequence situation. Rather than going to get your child, picking them and the ball up, okay, which you might have to do that first and then explain, now we're going to practice doing this the right way. I will usually, after explaining, like, you disobeyed, now we're going to practice doing this the right way, I would have them go back out into the field with the ball and practice coming when you say come, doing exactly what you say until they do it right. So the distinction that I'm making, and maybe it wasn't totally clear, is that when you ask your child to do something, rather than forcing them to do it, like making their arms do, what you ask them to do, what I think is better in the long run, even though it is harder, is practicing it, doing it over until they do it by themselves right. So for example, I was reading and doing Bible time with my boys today. I asked Ryland to come and sit next to me quietly. Now that's 3 tasks for him. That's come, that's sit, and be quiet. And he's almost 2.5, and so that's a complicated task, but he knows how to do it. I know that he knows it. And so this is more of it's kind of a maintenance training. But so we're sitting on the couch, and he was really cranky about it. Having tantrums is, we're kind of going through the terrible twos, as I've mentioned. And so we probably practiced it 15 times. Now, it would have been very much quicker if I had said, come here and sit quietly. He disobeyed, and then I just went and got him. and like held him down. But I think it's better that he learns he needs to do it himself. So especially as they get older, you can't force your child to sit on the couch with you when they're 8 years old or 12 years old. Like that's not a situation you want to be in as a mom, where you're forcing your child. You can't like standing behind your child and forcing them to wash the dishes. That's not obedience. That's you forcing them to do something. You want them to obey willingly and with a good attitude. So Ryland and I today, I think he had to practice it 15 times, where he got it one at a time. First, he was willing to come, but he would not sit and he would not be quiet. Then he came and sat, but he was not quiet. Finally, he came and sat and he was quiet. And throughout all that time, we struggled to do it with a good attitude. So it takes a lot longer to train. But generally, now this was a rough day, but generally he does know how to come and sit down and sit quietly with a good attitude. And that's what you want. You want them to obey all the way by themselves with a good attitude. And that is why training is so important. So that's what the practice is about. And that's the hard part. Because rather than picking them up and making them do it, which takes 5 seconds, you are having them do it over and over again until they do it right. But that's how you learn something, right? You don't learn anything by having somebody stand behind you and force your arms to do it. That's not learning. So the other thing that I will just note down here, and this is, you could call it a consequence, you could call it negative reinforcement, whichever, or punishment, whichever term that you prefer. But the consequence, and there are many, there are various, okay? It needs to be something that your child doesn't like. For example, I've heard that sometimes what happens, for example, like with a timeout, that you put your child on the step and you say, you're in timeout, you disobeyed mommy. Well, if your child enjoys sitting on the step, or if he finds like a car behind him on the step and then starts zooming around the car on the step, that's not a punishment, that's not negative reinforcement, that's a reward. So if your child enjoys whatever you've designated as a consequence, it's not a consequence, it's a reward, and you're rewarding their bad behavior. You have to be very careful to make sure that the punishment or consequence is a punishment. The punishment has to communicate to your child what you did was wrong. Because if you say, don't jump on the couch, here you get special time on the chair with your car, that means, please do jump on the couch. That's a wonderful thing for you to do, and I'm going to reward you for it. Does that make sense? So, I'm not going to specify what consequences you need to use. Different families can use different things. But it does have to be something that your child doesn't like. It has to be a punishment. So those are my sort of training principles. Easiest, safety concerns first. Practice, practice, practice. Make your child do it on his or her own, willingly, with a good attitude. And then a consequence has to be something that they don't like. So this is kind of what I'm referring to when I talk about training. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. You can always subscribe and pass it along to a friend.
Help me, Mama.